Hi guys, it's Cassie, and this is The Life of a Lewis. If you're just now joining us for the first time, I want to thank you so much for watching our videos, and for our return viewers, I want to thank you so much for your support. Today's video is going to be about my psych eval for my bariatric surgery. I got some really interesting news with my psych. So I'm going to go through the process with you guys, like which tests were required by my doctors and by my insurance. They're not the same tests. The insurance requires a test that my psychiatrist doesn't particularly care for. So she does the test that is required and then does an additional test for her own satisfaction. And I think that's pretty cool that she's that thorough. She wants to make sure that you're actually going to succeed and not just that the insurance is happy. I can see how both ways are beneficial because this test was really long. So I'm just going to jump right in with the list of tests that my doctor had me do. First of all, the psych eval took 3 appointments. A new patient appointment with my psychiatrist or I don't remember, clinical psychologist. I'm sure she has it on here somewhere. She's got a PhD. She's a doctor. That's all I know. All right, so Dr. P had me do 3 appointments, an intake appointment, the actual psych evaluation testing, and then a review appointment. So we sat down together on telehealth, and she went over all of my results with me. She explained everything in depth, and I appreciate that because otherwise I would have been reading all of these big words in here and been like, oh, did I pass? All right, so the testing required by my program, the Wechsler Brief Cognitive Status Exam, and the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. So they want to make sure that you are oriented and aware and that you're not like constantly living up here when the rest of the world's here. They want to make sure you understand, basically. Because there's a lot of stuff you need to understand for bariatric surgery, like dietary restrictions and exercise, like at a minimum. You need to know those things. Intellectual testing. This confused me along with the reading comprehension. Those 2 things kind of confused me, but she explained that they want to make sure that the information that you're being given is like being processed, not just that you're understanding what's being said, but that you're understanding what it means. And the reading comprehension is basically, they give you a lot of forms. Like I have this binder is full of paper that I have to read and understand. So they want to make sure that I'm capable of that. So personality testing. This is where I did the one that my insurance requires, the Minnesota Multifaceted Personality Inventory. That's like a mouthful, which compares my results to all other adults. And then the Million Behavioral Medicine Diagnostic, which compares my results to females with bariatric diagnosis. So she prefers the Million Behavioral Medicine Diagnostic. And I could see why, because it had a lot more to do with medical things than to do with what kind of personality I have. Is this person funny? Okay, well, that's not going to help me with bariatric surgery in the least. So anyway, she did both of those and then an eating attitudes test. So do you have an eating disorder? They, if you're a binge eater or if you're an emotional eater or, whatever, or well, even bigger than that, if you have not anemia, bulimia or anorexia, this might not be the best, or if you have those tendencies, it might not be the best for you. So they're just looking for those kinds of things. What I found super interesting, and I'm just going to read it off the page because this is the part that I was like, oh, wow, you learn something new about yourself every day, apparently. The pattern of her intellectual findings was consistent with her report of a lack of historical significant substance abuse, but somewhat indicative of her history of remote head trauma. So apparently my intellectual testing showed that I'm smarter on one half of my brain than the other, and the difference is big enough to indicate head trauma. I didn't know that was possible. And when I posted in the bariatric surgery support group, everyone was like, you need a new doctor. She's cray. But I was reading up on it, right? Okay, first it's important to know that I did suffer head trauma in 2008 on the left side of my head. And that's what she was saying, was the left side of your head. You hit it at some point and it did damage. And I'm like, we didn't talk about this accident. You can't possibly know it, even if we had, which side of my head I hit. So that was crazy. And then I looked at the results. I saw them with my own two eyes, and it's true. The right side of my brain functions better than the left side, which I didn't know was possible. So the other thing that she wrote that I wanted to read verbatim was just, of additional concern is the significant difference between Cassie's verbal and nonverbal abstraction abilities. So apparently it's a significant difference. When she was explaining it to me at first, she said that one was at 95 and one was at 85, which in my mind is like, okay, 10% difference, no big deal. But when you're thinking about your brain function, like 10% is kind of a big deal. So she wants me to see a neurologist for that. So that's exciting. And by exciting, I mean nerve-wracking, because like 10 years ago, I hit my head really hard. Actually, way more than 10 years ago. Almost 13 years ago, I hit my head really hard. And now, almost 13 years later, the doctor is like, hey, that might be a problem for you. So anyways, I passed. I can have bariatric surgery. She even wrote in here, like, this neurological issue is separate from the bariatric issue. Like, she can do surgery. She needs her head checked. Two separate entities. Don't marry them in the middle somewhere. Just let her get a head scan. Also do the surgery. So I did pass. But what's kind of funny is I got my results from her on Monday, right? And I posted my huge news, super exciting video on Monday night. And then Tuesday morning, she calls me back and is like, by the way, I'm really worried about this head trauma. And I was like, please don't tell me that that means that I can't have surgery, because I already posted the video on YouTube. So anyway, she said she was very explicit. She was going to be very explicit with the doctor. Like, do not let this hold up the process whatsoever. All right, so next, now that we know that there's something going on over here that needs worked on, I wanted to kind of go through like what the testing looked like, right? So the cognitive tests are a lot of like questions that she's verbally asking me that I'm answering her verbally. There's a lot of verbal. And then there's one written down where you're doing like puzzles almost, completing the pattern. It's a lot. Honestly, that probably took me the longest, because the rest of it's like multiple choice or like the often, sometimes, never stuff. So that's kind of, I mean, that stuff's easy. You know yourself pretty well. But like, well, I would hope. But to do the pattern stuff was really difficult for me. Like, I was sitting there for 5 minutes staring at this one block. Like, this is impossible. But I got it. Like I said, the rest of them are pretty simple, straightforward, fill in the bubble type things. But I had never had anyone tell me what was like on these tests. So the personality tests are like the same that you take no matter where you take a personality test, even the ones that are like on the internet, and you just click like, yes, I agree with that. That's me. No, not so much me. Yeah, that's me. No, that's not me. True or false. And super easy, basically. Yeah, so Cassie's current response profiles were unremarkable for psychopathology. So I'm not a psychopath. That was good news. Some of the wording in here is just hilarious, because reading it is like, oh, well, I knew I wasn't like completely insane, but wow, they were testing for literal like psychopaths. That's interesting. I would not want her job because, yeah, I would not want her job. So anyway, that's pretty much, well, that is all of what was involved in the psychological evaluation. I enjoyed the process because I learned some things about myself I didn't know. And then also, I mean, I can't be mad that she found head trauma. I should definitely get that checked out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Share with all your friends and family, and we'll see you next time.